Hello, my name is Chris Rodriguez, and I will be discussing our Ford Motor Company case. I'll discuss the general issues and the main stakeholders section of the case, and I'll start with the general issues with the company background, actually. Um, as many of us know, Ford's an automaker. It's based in Dearborn, Michigan, and it was incorporated in 1903. It is the second largest industrial company in the world. Uh, Its revenues top 144 billion and employs over 370,000 employees in over 200 countries. Again, the core business of this company is design and manufacture automobiles. In 1998, Ford was an industry leader in profit per car, and it was also voted as the most improved in terms of quality by J.D. Power and Associates. In 1999, Jack Nasser became the CEO, and he soon began to study models such as Cisco and Dell and try to figure out how they can incorporate these successful models into Ford's supply chain. The business environment at the time, um, Ford and other U.S. automakers were seeing their marketing approach by foreign automakers such as Honda, Toyota, and Volkswagen, and other foreign automakers instead. They soon realized that the battle for the industry was becoming more global, and at the same time, the industry was facing overcapacity because many of the developing countries encourage development and expansion of their own export-oriented auto industries. Um, some of the challenges in Ford trying to incorporate Dell's or Cisco's supply chain strategy is that Ford differs greatly from Dell, and one of the main points in which it differs is that Ford has a lot more suppliers than Dell does. Um, the case mentioned that Ford actually has thousands of suppliers and many more layers within those suppliers. In addition, Ford's purchasing organization plays a more important and independent role. Also, being that the company is over 100 years old, there's legacies in the system that can constrain any changes. Uh, some of the opportunities that Ford has is to reduce working capital and inventory obsolescence. It can continue programs such as automotive network exchange to create consistency in technology. It can achieve advantage in size and scale, and it can use IT to overcome geography constraints. I'll briefly identify some of the main stakeholders. The internal stakeholders are the employees, the board of directors, management. The external stakeholders are the customers, retailers, such as the distributors all over the country and countries, I guess. Shareholders, government, suppliers, and society. This concludes my part of the presentation. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Nebo and I am going to talk about theory and concept. As we know, business model defines how an organization interacts with its environment to define a unique strategy, attract the resources and build the capabilities required to implement the strategy, and create value for stakeholders. So let's look at the concept first. The goal of Ford is to build a new business model, which is to use emerging information technology to increase customer responsiveness. To achieve this, Ford needs to implement pull-based system, order-to-delivery system, and so on. Second, capabilities. Ford has strong brand name. Ford Motor Company was the second largest industrial corporation in the world. And also it has strong financial status and the ability to generate revenue. Ford 2000. Ford 2000 called for dramatic cost reduction to be obtained by re-engineering and globalizing operations and processes. And also, Ford has extensive supply chain. The supply base had grown along with the growth of the company in recent years. Ford has supportive IT systems, such as Ford production system, order-to-delivery system, business-to-business capability, and automotive network exchange system. Third, value. The value created by the new business model would be increased sales, which would be 8 million vehicles a year, increased profit, open new markets in foreign countries, increase market share through re-engineering projects, cost reduction, order-to-delivery time reduction, and increasing responsiveness.
Hi, my name is Christina Rendez, and I will be talking about the symptoms and problems. The first symptom was the U.S. market was being taken over, and this was because foreign automakers were expanding into the U.S. market, so they were bringing more competition into the automobile industry. So Ford came up with a restructuring plan called Ford 2000, which merged operations into a single global organization. This helped Ford achieve advantage in size and scale in their supply chain. Another problem that Ford had was that they had bottlenecks throughout their supply chain, and this resulted in slow order-to-delivery times, inefficient supply chain, and low customer satisfaction. So Ford came up with their OTD project, which reduced OTD time from more than 60 days to less than 15 days, and this resulted in higher customer satisfaction, a more efficient supply chain, and faster order-to-delivery times. Other symptoms Ford had were high supply chain costs and complexity within their supply chain, and this was because they had too many suppliers. Ford was picking suppliers based on cost with little regard to the overall supply chain costs. So the first thing Ford did was reduce the number of suppliers, which made their supply chain less complex, and they also shifted towards longer-term relationships with capable suppliers. By doing this, Ford expected yearly price reductions from suppliers to help reduce some of their supply chain costs. And the last symptom was that IT was not saving as much money as they had anticipated, and this was because suppliers were not able to invest in technologies at the rate Ford could itself, and also because IT maturity decreased in lower tiers of the supply chain. So under the Ford 2000, they also developed inline sequencing, which used computer software to tell suppliers exactly when and where components were needed.
Hello everyone, I'm Lily. I'm going to talk about the alternatives and the evaluation criteria about the Ford case. In the Ford case, the director of supply chain is facing three alternatives to decide. The first one is whether Ford should use emerging information technologies like Internet technology. Using new technology will improve the overall efficiency of the company and make it easier for customers and the suppliers to achieve Ford. However, it will cost the company in both capital and time to redesign the supply chain system and activate the new program. The second decision is whether to follow Dell's direct model of virtual integration. Dell's business model could make the productions with high customization and save a lot of time and cost in inventory. On the other hand, Ford, as a large automobile company, is different from the new technology industry. It has much more complex supply chain, and the amount of suppliers is much larger than Dell. In addition, the virtual integration business model will increase the difficulty for Ford to design and produce production, which will finally increase cost. The last one is to choose from push or pull model in supply chain strategy. In pull model, production could be scheduled from customer-driven order bank. It shortens the order-to-delivery time by 45 days or more. While improving high customer responsiveness, the model demands low capital support. The disadvantages of the pull strategy include the difficulty of making budget and forecasting demand. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily, for giving us an overview of the alternative solutions and your evaluations of those solutions. My name is David Prieto, and I will be discussing Ford's best solutions and the implementation I would recommend or that we would recommend in moving forward and implementing the best solutions we are recommending. In this particular slide, I plan to discuss what we feel is Ford's best solution in moving forward and solving some of the issues they're having. We've already discussed some of the symptoms and problems discussed previously by Christine and some of the alternatives, solutions, and evaluations provided by Lily. Based on those previous discussions, it appears as though taking part in the Ford 2000 initiative appears to be the best solution. Now, how would we recommend that Ford take part in implementing that best solution? Firstly, I would recommend that Ford establish a specific team, a specific group to really investigate and identify what makes Dell's virtual integration model really work for them. How are they leveraging this model and really developing value and developing quality products for their customers? After an extensive evaluation has been conducted of that process, I would ask that team to then adapt and apply certain principles that they found to work for Dell and apply them to Ford. How can those principles of virtual integration that Dell has developed and have leveraged in delivering their product, how can that be transferred over to Ford's initiatives and what they plan to do in giving to customers? Thirdly, after an evaluation of Dell's process and how that process transfers over to Ford, I would recommend that Ford engage in their Ford 2000 initiative, which includes the following. They would really need to leverage and focus IT as it will be the base in allowing all the subsequent steps in the Ford 2000 initiative to work successfully. As mentioned throughout the article, Ford wishes to replace inventory with information. And how do they plan to do that? By really leveraging their IT infrastructure. In doing so, they can create a process or develop a process titled the order to delivery process. The base of this process is really designed to minimize the time it takes for a customer to order a product and for them to finally deliver it. Currently, the product takes between 45 and 65 days. With the order to delivery process developed in the Ford 2000 model, we plan to reduce that to 15 days. Ford really should identify bottlenecks throughout their supply chain, including their marketing department, their materials department, potentially the vehicle production department, and maybe some transportational issues they may be having. By really investigating where these bottlenecks lie, they can dramatically decrease the amount it takes for customers to receive the products they have ordered. Next, as can be seen on the slide, Ford should really develop the Ford production system process. What this process is designed to do is to really allow Ford manufacturing and operations to become leaner and more responsive, and in doing so, becoming more efficient. This Ford production system process would really focus on key attributes of the production process and applying a specific level of production and redesigning it to make it more of a pull-based system as opposed to a push-based system. One key component of the Ford production system is the inline vehicle sequencing system that will be used in developing this process. What that process will do is it will allow Ford to exactly tell suppliers what materials they're needing at specific times. This again will dramatically reduce the amount of inventory that Ford needs to house in order to fill customer orders. In doing so, their process will become leaner and more efficient. Lastly, Ford really needs to develop a Ford retail network. And with that network, Ford will be able to really focus on their true competition. Rather than having two Ford dealerships trying to compete with one another in trying to sell a car to a customer, what Ford wishes to do is to really develop an entire network in which all Ford dealerships essentially become one and then try to compete against their true competition, being GM, Toyota, or Honda. By creating a Ford retail network, they really plan to, well, we are recommending that Ford develop this so that they can focus more on creating a superior selling experience for their customers. Additionally, while they're consolidating their different Ford dealerships into specific Ford networks, we would recommend that they simultaneously increase the number of service outlets so that they're closer to the customers. In essence, customers will be getting better customer service when purchasing a car and better customer service when servicing their car. In sum, based on all the information provided on this slide, it appears as though the Ford 2000 initiative would be the best solution for Ford to engage in. As can be seen on the graph here, this plan, if engaged the way we recommend it, would take approximately 5 years. Within the first 6 months, we would recommend that Ford assign the designated team to really research and investigate Dale's virtual integration model. The next step, or the next recommendation in the Ford 2000 initiative, would be, again, to establish a team to analyze and determine how best to deliver the Ford 2000 initiative and sort of milestones within the process and rollout. Again, that should take another 6 months. Then we would recommend that Ford begin the initiative and prepping employees and establishing the proper IT infrastructure to really allow Ford to deliver this new, leaner, meaner process. Next, I would recommend that the Ford team, which initially established and analyzed the Ford 2000 initiative and rollout, to then go down into the finer details and develop the order to delivery process. We would recommend setting aside 6 months to really develop and flush out the ideas within this process. Next, we would allow 12 months to implement the order to delivery process. As can be seen in the graphic, the first 6 months of the project would really be the focus team meeting with the necessary individuals to make this process work. They would work together in developing an overall view, an overall plan, and how to deliver and create this process. The subsequent 6 months, which would be 1997, Q3, and Q4, the team that worked in conjunction with the Ford 2000 initiative team would then take over and really embrace the order to delivery process and make it their own. Next, we would recommend that the Ford 2000 initiative team would then develop the Ford production system process. Again, taking 6 months to really develop and flush out the idea. Next, I would recommend that Ford take 12 months to implement the Ford production system, using the same approach as used in the order to delivery process. Specifically, the Ford 2000 initiative team would work with the relevant stakeholders and relevant team members necessary to deliver the Ford production system process plan. The first 6 months would be those two teams working collaboratively to make sure this plan can be initiated. The next 12 months would then be that team essentially working individually and tweaking the process as they deem necessary to really develop this Ford production system process. Next, we would recommend that 6 months be set aside to really develop and flesh out the Ford retail network. Again, we would need 12 months to really implement this plan and to get the necessary dealerships prepped and ready to really give a superior customer experience. The first 6 months of that 12-month implementation of the Ford retail network, again, would be planning and prepping these dealerships. The subsequent 12 months with those new dealerships then working together, really figuring out and ironing in what exactly needs to be done to develop or to deliver the best customer service possible. Lastly, in the year 2000, I would recommend that Ford evaluate the Ford 2000 initiatives and really improve or redesign where necessary. Again, I would take the team that initially analyzed the Ford 2000 rollout and have them evaluate sort of how the process unfolded, and if any tweaks or if any redesigns need to be implemented to make the process even leaner, even more efficient, to really help not only the customers, but at the end, relevant shareholders and stakeholders. Once the team has identified what improvements and redesigns need to take place, they can then implement those redesigns and improvements to make the process even better. So 6 months to evaluate and to really investigate what needs to be improved upon, and then 6 months to implement those improvements and redesigns. Lastly, I would recommend that Ford continually gather information from all the processes they have engaged in, from all the teams they have used and worked with to gather information and to really establish, okay, where can we make the process even better, even after initial improvements and redesigns have occurred. As with any system, it can always work incrementally better. And if Ford finds that by initiating in these incremental improvements really improves the overall process, creating a significantly better process overall, they should engage in that. So in sum, in this slide, I've discussed what we feel the best solution should be, which is the Ford 2000 initiative, how to implement that plan, and the time sequence in which to engage in that plan. So in essence, if Ford were to engage in the Ford 2000 initiative, it would take approximately 5 years to really roll out the entire plan to fidelity. And with that, I then pass it to Jose Navarrete, who will now be discussing an evaluation and review of the entire project and discussing the current status update of Ford and how they're doing today. Thank you.
Hello class, my name is Jose Navarrete, and today I will be giving you a brief presentation on the project review and evaluation of the case along with Ford's current status. In an effort to avoid risk of getting left behind, Ford embarked on an ambitious restructuring plan called Ford 2000. Through this restructure, the company's North American, European, and international automotive operations would be restructured into a single global organization. Ford 2000 called for a dramatic cost reduction that would be achieved by re-engineering and globalizing corporate organizations and processes, consolidation of product activities into 5 vehicle centers, each responsible for the development of vehicles in a particular consumer market segment, and making products and processes globally common, which would eliminate organizational and process redundancies and realize huge economies of scale in manufacturing and purchasing. This new approach required that technology be employed to overcome the constraints usually imposed by geography on information flow. Overall, Ford 2000 is a great shift for Ford, which allowed them or will allow them to launch a public internet site, reach 1 million site visits per day, launch a company-wide intranet, put in place business-to-business capability, team up with Chrysler and GM to work on the Automotive Network Exchange, which aimed to create consistencies in technology standards and processes in the supplier network, reduce the number of suppliers, focusing on long-term relationships rather than price competition, which led to yearly price reductions from close relationship with suppliers, produce Ford Production Systems, which would make Ford manufacturing operations leaner, more responsive, and more efficient, initiate order to delivery, which would reduce customers' delivery from order to 15 days from 45 to 65 days, creating a more lean, flexible, and predictable process, and launch the Ford Retail Network, which would lead to personnel and advertising cost savings as well as inventory efficiencies. Ford continues its efforts of constant improvement to date. Ford has overhauled their production strategy from what was, in essence, a regional company to that of a fully globalized business. They have done this through workforce reductions and plant closures, focusing on minimizing overcapacity and reducing inefficiencies. Through this, Ford has become a leaner and stronger Ford Motor Company. Ford has been able to adapt their manufacturing operations to be more flexible. This has allowed them to save money, increase the speed of product development, and be more efficient in the delivery of innovative new technologies in their core markets. In 2011, the Ford brand surpassed the 2 million mark for US vehicle sales, making it the best-selling brand in America. Ford has also adapted their product lines and have gone from being considered largely a truck manufacturer to now a full-line automaker with competitive products in all segments of the market. Ford's U.S. small car sales were up in 2011, giving them 10% of the small car segment. Ford has also continued its financial progress through the strengthening of its balance sheet by increasing automotive gross cash, reducing debt, and improving liquidity. Due to its financial progress, Ford was able to reinstate a quarterly stock dividend of 5 cents per share in 2012. They also announced profit-sharing payments to approximately 41,600 eligible U.S. hourly employees and have pledged to add 12,000 hourly jobs in the U.S. by 2015. In an effort to realign production with demand, Ford has recently retooled its facilities that previously built large trucks and SUVs to instead manufacture smaller and more energy-efficient vehicles. Overall, Ford is investing $16 billion in its U.S. operations by 2015, reinforcing its commitment to U.S. manufacturing and American jobs. As we can see, Ford continues its progress, allowing it to continue its presence in the automotive